At dawn, a president vanished, not in a coup, not in an election, but in an operation ordered from Washington. This is not a movie opening. This is how 2026 began. While Caracas was still burning, Donald Trump was already airborne on Air Force One, calm, smiling, explaining the abduction of Nicolas Maduro as if it were a business deal. No regrets, no ambiguity, just one message: America is back. And it is done pretending. For decades, the United States denied being an empire. It spoke the language of rules, of order, of values. This time, it spoke the language of power. This is our hemisphere. That sentence matters, because when great powers stop hiding their intentions, the world changes fast. If you want to understand the future you are about to live in, you need to understand this moment. Stay with me, because Venezuela is not the story. It is the signal. What happened in Venezuela was not improvisation. It was intention. The real question is not how the operation happened. It is why it happened now. For years, the United States exercised power while denying it sought control. It intervened, it sanctioned, it destabilized, all while insisting on a rules-based order. Trump ended that contradiction. By seizing a sitting president and openly discussing oil extraction, he reframed American power as ownership, territory, resources, influence. This is not about Maduro. And it is not even about Venezuela. It is about a worldview, a belief that strength is the only law that matters. That history belongs to those willing to take it back. When Trump invokes the Monroe Doctrine, he is not quoting history. He is rewriting it. What we are witnessing is the return of an old idea in modern form: empire without apology. To grasp how dangerous and how seductive this idea is, we need to step back, because this moment did not appear out of nowhere. It is the product of a long historical arc. To understand this, we have to go backward. Not years, centuries. The United States was born rejecting empire, a revolt against one, a nation suspicious of distant rulers and foreign crowns. But power changes countries. In 1823, the Monroe Doctrine was framed as protection. No more European empires in the Americas. A shield, not a sword. That fiction did not last. By 1904, Theodore Roosevelt had transformed it. The shield became a baton. Washington declared itself the regional police. Judge and force intervention followed again and again. After 1945, something shifted. The US became dominant, but it stopped growing territorially. Instead, it built bases, influence, rules, empire without maps. For decades, that balance held, hypocritical, uneven, but relatively stable. Now that restraint is gone. Trump looks back to the age before limits, before apologies, before masks. History, to him, is not a warning. It is a menu, and Venezuela sits squarely on it. But history never repeats cleanly. It accelerates, and the next shock is already forming. The first shock came fast, and it was deliberate. A president seized, an oil state neutralized. A message sent: no prolonged war, no drawn-out occupation, just force, clean, visible. Trump called it a success. No American fatalities. Several Venezuelan and Cuban lives lost. That asymmetry was the point. Then came the warning shots. Cuba is ready to fall. Colombia's leader dismissed as a criminal. Greenland placed on a countdown. This was not diplomacy. It was demonstration. Power is most effective when it is theatrical. And Trump understands spectacle. If you are watching closely, you realize this was never about Venezuela's stability. It was about proving something, that borders are negotiable again. That sovereignty is conditional. That resistance carries a cost. If this felt sudden, it shouldn't have. Empires test the world first, quietly, then loudly. If you want to understand where the next test might be, keep listening. Because this crisis was only the opening move, and the real machinery sits beneath it. What matters most is not the strike, it is the system behind it. Trump's foreign policy is not chaotic, it is transactional. Resources matter more than alliances. Leverage matters more than law. Control matters more than consent. This is where the so-called Monroe Doctrine comes in. A doctrine stripped of ideals, reduced to assets, oil fields, shipping lanes, strategic territory. In this worldview, the Western Hemisphere is not a community. It is a balance sheet. Stephen Miller said it plainly. The world is governed by strength, by force, by power. That logic leaves no room for neutrality, no space for small states to breathe. If you are weak, you are vulnerable. If you are valuable, you are a target. This is empire without administration, without responsibility, without permanence, not occupation, extraction, and that makes it more unstable, not less, because systems built on force alone cannot explain themselves. They can only expand, which brings us to the next escalation. Faster, riskier, closer to collision. The second crisis pushed the world closer to the edge. An oil tanker, Russian flagged, escorted by a submarine, seized anyway. That moment mattered more than Venezuela because it tested something bigger, not a country, but a boundary. For decades, great powers avoided direct humiliation of one another. They fought through proxies, through sanctions, through shadows. This time, the message was blunt. Rules no longer restrain strength. Russia noticed. China noticed. So did every smaller nation watching silently. This is how miscalculation begins. Not with speeches, with confidence. Trump's America is not asking permission. It is daring response. And when multiple empires act this way, stability becomes temporary, accidental, fragile. History tells us this pattern well. Periods where empires coexist. Until one move goes too far, the danger is not intention, it is momentum. Because once force becomes normal, restraint looks like weakness. And weakness, in this new order, invites correction. Now imagine what this means for ordinary people, not strategists, not leaders, but you. That is where the real cost appears. For people on the ground, empire is not an idea. It is a shock. If you live in Caracas, power outages are not theory. They are nights without light, hospitals without machines, families without certainty. If you live nearby, fear travels faster than armies. Borders feel thinner. Futures feel smaller. And if you live far away, don't be fooled. This still reaches you because when force replaces rules, prices rise, energy tightens, markets shake, and trust collapses quietly. You are told these actions are about security, about strength, about greatness. But strength without limits always finds the vulnerable first. History shows this clearly. Empires promise order. They deliver disruption. If this analysis resonates with you, share it. Because understanding is the only defense ordinary people ever get. What is happening now is not local. It is contagious. And the ripple is already spreading beyond the Americas. That is where the global consequences begin. The shockwaves do not stop at borders. They rarely do. When the United States reclaims empire openly, it changes the rules everywhere. Not just in Latin America. Russia watches and learns. China recalculates. Middle powers hedge. Why respect sovereignty if power no longer does? Putin already sees history as unfinished business. Ukraine was not the beginning. It was a chapter. Z speaks of rejuvenation, of restoring what was lost. Taiwan sits at the center of that promise. Trump's move in Venezuela does not deter them. It legitimizes them. A world divided into spheres of influence is not stable. It is frozen tension. Empires can coexist for a time, but coexistence depends on discipline. And discipline is precisely what this moment lacks. The real danger is not a single war. It is normalization. Once force becomes acceptable again, restraint looks naive. And when restraint disappears, accidents multiply. The world is entering a phase where mistakes matter more than intentions. So the question is no longer who is right. It is who miscalculates first. To see where this leads, we have to look ahead. Not with certainty, but with scenarios. When systems break, the future does not arrive as a single outcome. It fractures. I see three possible paths ahead. The first is managed empire. Great powers carve the world into zones. America takes the Western Hemisphere. Russia tightens its grip nearby. China moves in Asia. Conflict is limited, brutal, but contained. This world is colder, less free, but predictable. The second path is drift. No clear rules, no firm boundaries. Each crisis solved ad hoc. Small wars multiply. Markets remain nervous. Trust erodes slowly. This is the most likely future because it requires no discipline, only momentum. The third path is collision. A misread signal, a seized ship, a downed aircraft. Empires do not choose this path. They stumble into it. History teaches us this. Systems fail not from ideology, but from overconfidence. Trump believes power clarifies. Sometimes it does. Often it blinds. The question is not which future leaders want. It is which one their actions make inevitable. And that brings us to the final truth of this moment. Because empire always asks the same question. Who pays the price? Empire always ends the same way. Not with triumph, but with consequences. What Trump revealed in Venezuela was not strength alone. It was impatience. The belief that power can shortcut complexity. That force can replace legitimacy. That fear can stand in for consent. For a while, it works. It always does. But systems built on coercion consume trust faster than they create order. They leave behind instability disguised as control. This is not a warning about one man or one country. It is a reminder about history. Every empire believes it is the exception. Every empire believes it is acting rationally. Every empire believes the cost will be paid by someone else, until it isn't. If you want to understand the world you are entering, don't just watch events. Watch the language. When leaders stop pretending, they tell you exactly what comes next. If this analysis helped you see the pattern, share it. Subscribe. Stay with me. Because this story does not end in Venezuela. It is only beginning.